This is Dev. Dev embarks on a podcasting journey to listen to the countless creatives, leaders, normal everyday people, and everyone in between in his life on Devisalive and listening to
Ivey Rowland. You are quite literally one of the most positive-minded people I've ever met in my life. You light up a room with your radiant, sun-like energy and willingness to hear those around you. In the short time I've known you, I've learned so much, but yet so little at the same time. And today, we're going to be listening to you on episode 2 of Devisalive and listening to, and I'm so excited to have you on the podcast because, man, it's almost been a year and a half since I've met you for the first time.
Probably.
It's like January
right
of 2022.
Okay, yeah, that sounds right.
Because we all got together to watch Scream.
Oh, yeah.
And that was the first time I met you, and I was like, I like this one. How are you?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here and talk to you and go deep with you. Because exactly like you said, I feel the same way about you. Like, we've connected, but you don't really know a lot about me. And I feel the same about you.
I don't. And I think, like, the only way to really start is, like, take me back before I met you. Because, like, I know a little bit about you and, like, a lot about you and what's going on in your day-to-day life now. But, like, pre-January 2022, all the way back to, like, your adolescence, childhood, like, what would you say is, like, the stepping stones to where you are today?
You want me to go back to, like, baby Ivey?
All the way back.
Okay. Baby Ivey.
It's like your memoir.
You'll know some of this about me already.
Yeah.
But I grew up in a really small town, Wrightsville, Georgia. Very conservative environment.
Yeah.
My family, very small family, but super close-knit. I was the oldest of, like, 2 siblings. I have my younger brother and my younger sister. And I grew up always, like, so curious, as I think, like, when I think of just the younger years of my life, like, I was always just a very curious child about everything. I'm like that to this day, too. I feel like always asking so many questions about everything around me and wanting to understand the world around me and the people around me and myself.
Yeah.
Always inquisitive. And sometimes that was met with, like, a bit of resistance, I would say, just because the area that I grew up in and my family, you don't get to ask certain things, I think. And I think that influenced me from a really young age of wanting to press up against that and just being really curious. So I kind of channeled that curiosity into the school setting, and I was very into school and learning and academic sort of realms of things and reading. So I was like a little, like, nerd bookworm girl growing up. And then other than that really, like, stayed with me throughout. And then my other kind of constant growing up was dance. So my grandmother owned a dance studio when she was younger, and then my mother danced, and then I put me in dance as soon as I could walk. And that's been the most constant thing of my whole life is dance. I grew up in dance. I did competitive dance. I did it through middle school, high school. That was always my constant. I would try other things that didn't work out so well, sports, even, like, instruments. Dance was always, like, the one constant in my life, even when I moved to different schools or was just trying to figure out life as you do. Yes. That was the only thing that always remained constant for me, with all the fluxes of life that are so inevitable. Even in my family life, things that would change. That was the constant for me, was dance, and then being really into my studies. Those were, like, my 2 big things. And then when I graduated high school, I just had no idea what I wanted to do, Devin.
Really?
I had no idea. I'm so interested in so many things, and I
Yeah.
had like so much curiosity about the world, but I think almost too much. It felt so overwhelming. Like I
Yes.
couldn't really hone it into any one thing. I was interested about this, that, and the other. I wanted to pursue dance. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I graduated, and I
Yeah.
felt like everyone had such really high expectations of me. My family, teachers that knew me, because I always did things well, did school well, did my dance things well, did things how people, like the good girl thing. Like, so I feel like the expectations of me were super high to like graduate, go to college, know exactly what I was going to do and just do great things. And the pressure of that was so
Yeah.
intense for me.
It's an overbearing pressure to, at the formative age of like 17, 18, 19, 20, like that pocket of years, have expectations already. And I think they formulate and manifest from success we saw in formative things like high school, which is unfair, to be honest with you, because the experience of high school, though, carries through your adulthood. It's nowhere near the experience you're going to get from your adulthood in that like early 20s setting, where that's going to end up, telling you where you're going to be in 10 years. And sometimes not even. It's like,
I think not even.
yeah, because the timeline for everybody is so different. It's something I talk about with some of my friends who are dealing with, the pressures of being in their early 20s. And I'm like, I heard it from, there's this artist called Little Sims who has an album called The Gray Era, which is about being in your 20s through your, like, the beginning of your 30s. It's the gray era where you don't know what the fuck is happening there. And you're just kind of, throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. And when you find that little thing, like what age that is, you're like, okay, I can, play into this and see where it takes me. And I think you've done such a brilliant job with that, because while you had so many interests, you knew dance was something that was going to bring you catharsis. And you knew that, being in STEM was going to be something that, provides your academic brain, which leads into my next question. What is it like being a part of the community that is women in STEM, which that's one of the coolest things about you to me. Like,
Thank you.
Really applied yourself there throughout college and, found yourself in some really cool opportunities. What is it like? What's the state of things like right now in that category of life?
I think it's really interesting to be a woman in engineering specifically. Sure. And I came to engineering, I didn't think I was going to do that. I remember when I went to orientation for college, and I was going to do dance, and then I kind of veered away from that and just started teaching dance, which was just a lifesaver for me in and of itself. Yeah. And I went into psychology because I just wanted to understand people and understand myself. Yeah. And turns out I do, but that's not what I wanted to do with my career. And I remember at the orientation for like my freshman year of college, my mom was like, why don't you do engineering, like some type of engineering? I was like, no way, Mom, like I'm not smart enough for that. I remember specifically us saying that, and I knew it was more male dominated, and I was like, I'm not gonna do that. And then, as things happen, a year later, what am I doing? Like, I'm majoring in environmental engineering,
with multiple opportunities, I might add, which congratulations. That's so cool.
I appreciate you. But I love the field that I'm in, specifically environmental. I'm so passionate about it genuinely, which I think makes all the difference. It has been really challenging, of course, but I like that challenge, and I do have a very like math-oriented, like technical brain. But I like engineering, environmental specifically, because I feel like so many areas of my life, this holds true of like, it's the intersection of like technique and creativity, of discipline and the creative. I feel like that in dance. I feel like that in engineering. I feel like that in my life, right. Of the marriage of the discipline and the structure, or the technique with like the freedom and the expanse to be creative. Wow. And in that like marriage of things, that's where I feel the most like powerful, I guess you would say. And I feel that in the realm of engineering, because you have to work really hard to learn the formulas, learn the processes, learn how to solve the problems.
Yes.
But then you want to do them in like a new, innovative, creative way. So you have to have both of those parts of yourself working together in tandem to create like a really good product.
Yeah.
So I love the environmental field, and especially because I feel so connected to the earth. So I knew that I wanted to do that part of engineering, like where I could do something that influences our impact on the planet. And mainly I'm really interested in water and the cleanliness of our water and
Yes.
conserving water. I do volunteer work around that too. I think it's just so important to us as beings, like connecting to the earth, connecting to the water, connecting to all that is under us at all times.
Yes.
And that's so beautiful and whimsical, but then marrying that with like the precision of engineering, I think it's really awesome that I'm able to do that.
Yeah.
But to be a woman in a really male-dominated field, of course, comes with its challenges. You don't see a lot of professors who are women. You don't have a lot of women in your classes. I found a lot of times in lab groups specifically, I'd be the only female in the group, and I never really felt like I was quite taken seriously, but I was kind of expected to do the majority of the work. Sort of thing,
Yeah.
which was a big struggle for me at first to kind of learn to sit with that. But it kind of forced me to find my own voice and really hold my own in a space, and to force myself to know that I am serious. I know what I'm doing. I don't really need you to know that about me for me to know that is true and continue to bring that to the table.
Right.
But I think that's probably the number one thing that I've battled with being in the field, is feeling like, even maybe sometimes I struggle with this thought too, maybe I'm projecting that. Maybe I am being taken seriously, but I'm almost projecting that a bit too, because I've seen it played out a few times that I'm not taken seriously. So sometimes you can create that narrative when someone's not even feeding that energy to you, really.
That's true, but I would almost consider the first one more than the latter, just being
I've had like very clear exampos of
just
I'm
straight
not
up
being-
misogyny. Yeah.
No, exactly. And I have a lot of friends who've dealt with more serious incidents of examples of that playing out than I have. But every female that I've connected with, we always connect really closely, I feel like, in our classes, because it's only a few of us, or even in the workplace too. We really connect and have like a really tight bond, which I think is special to see, because sometimes I feel like you can, if you're the only woman in a field, you can become really competitive,
100%.
fighting for those few places that
Yes.
they're providing for you.
Yes.
But I think what I've seen, and I try to really push this forward, is seeing like more of a sense of connection and unity and support for one another, because you know you had to work this much harder to get to this place. You know you're going to have a bit more pushback from people. And I see that in the few female professors that I had during school. They were just top notch, Devin. Like, you could tell that they did have to work a bit harder to get to that place, to get that job, and their work is just next level. And I've really tried to connect with them, like going through school, and just have them kind of like serve as mentors.
Yes.
But moving out of school into the career field and the job I'm at now, I'm in a lab where for a while, when I first started there, I was the only woman there. And it was a big adjustment for me.
Yeah.
Just even the energy of it, of kind of like limited expectations around what they think you could do. Since I'm in a lab setting, it's sometimes can be more physical.
Yeah. Okay.
And I found myself being assigned to the computer task all the time instead of the more physical fieldwork task that I was totally capable of doing.
Yeah.
But
Just like
just
constant
kind of assumed
underestimating of
exactly
your
what I'd be
strengths,
capable of doing. So I think
Jesus.
it's important, though, to go through that and then come into your own power of like, I know what I can do. I know what I'm capable of doing. It's definitely made me more confident in my own skills and abilities and kind of know for sure what I'm bringing to the table. And also, it makes me want to invest in when, as I work my way up in my career, to be sure to invest time and energy into women coming up under me. Absolutely. And making sure they feel the support that they need and they have all the resources and they just understand the struggle and know that someone understands what you're going through. I think no matter what you're dealing with, who you are, whatever environment, that's important to have someone to be like, I see you, what you're going through is valid, and I'm here to support you, and you're awesome, and you got this. And I want to be sure to do that as I continue to kind of move up in my career path, wherever it shall take me.
Right. Incredible. I want to go back a little bit because you said something so profound, which kind of reminded me how much I love how your brain works. And it was your rationalization of how mutually exclusive your work and your academics and your dance life is, and how, you're just working hard for something and seeing that it takes this amount of discipline and this amount of freedom to combine and work, and the product will show, and how great that is because you were free enough to do what you need to do to just express and work out, an equation or whatever it is you're going to be doing in your STEM work. And in dance, it's like, I need the creation and freedom to do this, that, and the third, and the discipline to do this move, and I will be able to come out with a product that I'm proud of. And you combining the two just now was like, I'm going to see my face in my self camera and be like, whoa, that was insane that you combined those two. And it leads me into my next question of like, how has dance served you in the, simultaneous time you were in school, still doing your engineering work, and that being an obvious career path that you were taking, just to have a livelihood and also something you care about deeply with the environment. What was teaching dance to those little girls doing for you for all those, how many years have you been doing it now?
5 years.
5 years. How has that served you? Because I know we've talked about it in our personal conversations, but just to hear you talk about, teaching the women that are going to come after you in STEM is very applicable to the women you're teaching that are going to be, grown in, a couple years in dance. So what has that done for you?
Even like you asking me about that, I just feel my heart like literally light up. And that's the effect that it has on me. It's like I feel my heart just widening even to talk about it. It's hard for me to even put in words how grateful I am for the role that teaching dance has played in my life. Like I said, when I graduated high school and moved up here and was really so confused about what I wanted to do, I found that studio and started teaching there, and it was such a constant place of grounding and joy. It became a family and a home for me up here, truly. The people I worked with, incredible. I never knew that I was going to love teaching dance like that. I know I loved to dance, but I didn't know that I was going to love to teach it. And I found out I love teaching it more than I even love doing it myself and performing, as much as I love doing that. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
But something about teaching dance is so magical for so many reasons. I think one of them being, I think most of us go throughout our lives so disconnected from our bodies and so in our heads. And dance, for me and students that I've interacted with, it offers an escape from that where you're truly in your body. It's such a healthy way to deal with emotions or life or stress or anything like that. You're out of your head, you tap into your body, you connect to another part of yourself. When you find that point, I think we all tap into it in different things, but where you're just in that flow state. You're not thinking, you're just moving. There's no thoughts. You're in that place of non-thinking. It's like when you're really deep in a meditation or something like that. You aren't in your head anymore. You're just being and living, and you're alive. And to see like a student really tap into that, and I know they'll take that with them for the rest of their lives, it's so magical.
Yes.
And I love teaching the little ones. I wasn't sure how that was gonna go, like 4, 5, 6-year-olds. They are amazing. Children are such good teachers, and I say this all the time, but I truly believe it. Even when they make us uncomfortable, they're teaching us something, I think.
Yeah.
Because I like to think, what about this is making me uncomfortable when kids kind of do their kids' things, because they're not in this box that we've put ourselves into. So to see them being really free sometimes makes us a little bit uncomfortable. But I love seeing them being so pure. To every emotion they experience, they let it fully come through their body. They don't hold it back for anybody or anything.
Right.
They're so free in the way they move, and they fall down with no fear and get back up and just do it again. And I remember one time specifically, this little girl was like looking at herself in the mirror and just like dancing around. She was like, oh, I'm so beautiful. And I thought,
no, I would
you
have cried.
are so beautiful. Like, there's so much to learn from them. The way they just love on each other in class, and they call each other beautiful and so sweet names. And I just love it.
Yeah.
They don't have that kind of sheltered wall up yet.
Yeah.
And it fed so much joy and life into me, and I learned so much from them. And my past year teaching, it was the first time I taught an adult class, and like moms of kids in the dance studio. I'd never taught an adult class before. I wasn't sure how it was going to go. I was like, I'll give it a shot. And that was an incredibly powerful experience as well, to be able to work with women who have struggles with tapping into their body and looking at themselves in the mirror and getting out of the responsibilities in their head and the loops of the to-do list that they need to do, and being able to facilitate that for them. And I had so many deep emotional conversations, like after dance class, or I'd have some of them cry during dance class. And to be able to facilitate that and be a part of that collective experience with other women was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't express my gratitude enough for that finding me and me finding that, because that was a bit of a lifesaver for me in terms of finding my path and my journey and what is deeply important to me.
Yeah. It's severely life-changing. And it kind of reminds me of how much this past year has kind of reminded me to just remain a little bit more youthful in my approach to things. Because I think one thing that you kind of said it, they don't have that sheltered wall up yet, which is inevitably going to come up in the world, because the world is so goddamn scary.
It's crazy. It's absurd.
It's insane how many variables are kind of against people, even the people that are just minding their business and doing whatever it is they're doing in their life. But to be surrounded by the neuroplasticity and happiness of a kid at all times, and it's your 9 to 5, was probably one of the more like just supplying things in your life at that moment, because you are a human being and probably had one of your own sheltered walls up, and they force it down when you're around them. And I could only imagine how supplying and happy it was to be there. You're still there, correct?
I don't go as often, so now I pretty much just sub when needed.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But this summer was my first period of time, and as long as I can remember, of not being in a studio regularly.
Yeah.
And then they called me in to sub one day, and I think I didn't realize how much I missed it until I went and subbed that class, and I said, oh, I've got to call me more often.
Yeah.
Like, I have been missing this.
Sure.
I didn't even realize it until I was back. And like, that's something I kind of have to have in my life. I think there's some things that you have to find that you really need in your life, and you need to seek them out, even if they don't always fit in your schedule so nicely and neatly, but just things that you need to show up as your full self in the world. Even when you get busy and all the things of life. That's one of the things that I kind of almost have to have in my life for me to be living the fullest expression of myself.
Which is so important that you know and you're cognizant of that, because I think one of the biggest downfalls of a lot of people is they don't know that thing that serves them that much, and that's kind of the sad part of addiction and sad part of like anything where you confide in something that is ultimately not healthy when you could confide in music, art, fucking STEM, if that's your thing.
Anything.
At literally
you have to
anything.
Find that thing for yourself.
Yes.
I think I don't want to frame it in like, go find your purpose, because that is not what I mean, and that's way too much pressure. But I think you have to have that thing in your life that just lets you kind of see clearly.
Yes.
Like, it gives you a different perspective. It lets you see beyond the illusion of what clouds our vision in the everyday. You need something like that for you to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, another thing about you that I, you know, found out pretty quickly was your spiritual side. You definitely embrace a lot of spirituality, and it's just kind of ingrained in your day-to-day basis that you're going to be doing this for some holistic purpose, or just doing whatever it is to remain in this Zen mode where I have only known this incredibly positive and radiant version of you, and not even like in the stereotypical way, because I think when people hear that, they're like, oh, she's just, you know, putting up an act. There is no hyperbole when I say that Ivy is a ray of fucking sunshine. And even in the dark days where you are complicit and very articulate about it being a bad day, and you know why it was a bad day, and it's probably because I didn't do this for myself or I didn't do that. And I think that's because you're so tapped in with yourself through those spiritual activities. When did that practice come into your life? Like, when did you find yourself adapting that into your everyday and, you know, becoming a better version of yourself, if that's what's the purpose?
I think the seed that was planted for me with all of this part of my life is really life, not even a part of my life. It's infused, like you say, in every part of me being alive.
Yeah.
But I think that seed was planted for me in 7th grade. I had this teacher. His name was Dr. Emmons. I just moved to a private school in a really small town. It was very Christian, very conservative. But this man, Dr. Emmons, he wasn't from the area at all. He had traveled the world, and he was different. There was something different about how he saw the world, how he taught, his energy. And he introduced me to meditation. And of course, in 7th grade, I didn't latch on to these things very hard, but he taught me for 3 years. And I've never had a teacher have such a profound impact on my life. And really, that curiosity that I had, that I felt like sometimes was pushed against and wasn't really welcome, he welcomed that fully, wanted me to go deep into that curiosity. And like I say, I wasn't already interested in the profound impacts of meditation per se, but he introduced me to different ways of being. He was a practicing Buddhist, which he didn't talk a lot about, of course, at our private Christian school.
Sure.
But you could see that in the way he lived his life. He was a vegetarian, and I know it sounds so simple, but I didn't know any people who were vegetarian. And just hearing him express his beliefs and opinions and ideals about the world had such a grand impact on me that I still keep in touch with him to this day.
Incredible.
So I think that planted the seed. And then high school was really tough for me. I just did not know who I was, to be honest with you. I had a lot of stuff like within me that I needed to heal and work through that I didn't even see, which I think is the problem for a lot of people. I was just seeing how I was acting, and that I didn't really feel comfortable in myself, or I didn't feel very happy or joyful, but I didn't see like the root of that or the causes of that, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
And after I moved away and out of that area and away from that like familiarness, I had a lot of anxiety come up for me. Social anxiety, and even just the tiniest little things would happen, but I would have a profound like emotional response to it. Like the thing that would happen in my emotional response did not feel like they were in alignment. So I knew something just wasn't right. I was missing something in my life. I knew that for sure. And I started going to yoga, and it started out as just the asana practice, which is just the physical poses to kind of get in shape. But then I started learning more about yoga and how yoga is just a way of life. It's a spiritual practice. The poses are just one of the 8 limbs of the yoga. And then I took a religion class, and I was assigned to do the presentation around Buddhism. So I reached out to Dr. Emmons, and we started talking about Buddhist philosophy, and he connected me with a Sangha down in Atlanta, and I went there and did their meditation with them, which is like 30 minutes of meditation followed by 5 minutes of walking meditation. You complete it 3 times. And I remember I went there, and during that meditation, I'd never really experienced that silence of mind. I have a really, really busy mind, but I tapped into that place where the mind is silent, and you know you're more than your thoughts. You know that you're more than that anxiety voice. You know you're more than any voices. And you know that you're not just alone, I guess you would say. And that re-sparked that kind of, or it started to, I guess, cultivate that seed that Dr. Emmons had planted in me so many years before. And that just really started my journey. I just started researching so many different spiritual practices and religions, and reading the books and teachers like Alan Watts and Ram Dass. I would just binge watch their lectures on YouTube, and some things that they were saying, just something inside me lit up like that. There's a truth there, like keep going after this. There's something in this like really important for you. And at first I struggled because I couldn't land on anything like to call myself any like a Christian or a Buddhist or this or that, or even spiritual. I think I kind of struggle with the word a little bit because I feel like now it becomes kind of a trendy thing, like an aesthetic thing, as opposed to a way of being in your life. And so for a while I struggled with like, I don't know what I am, how to identify. And then I finally just began to see through that, and those are just kind of limiting cages, or that's how it feels for me. Yeah. And I don't have to fall. It's great if you do. I think it's wonderful if you find that that rings true for you.
Sure.
But if those don't ring true for you, there are other paths that you can walk down. But when I started really implementing meditation into my everyday life, just a spiritual curiosity about the world, just having more mindfulness around the sacredness of what it is to be alive and have breath and to talk to you right now, I saw that anxiety begin to fade away.
Wow.
Because it would still come and talk, but I would see it as like almost like the birds are chirping right now. Like that's how I would begin to hear my anxiety. Like that's not me. I can just hear that. And if I wait a little bit, that will pass away too. And I stopped having panic attacks. I was having bad panic attacks. I kind of stopped having that. And I dived more into energetics and like inner child healing, I guess you would say. I just kept up a curiosity around it, but stopped trying to fit it into one box and just implemented it into my everyday life. And I saw such a shift in the way I saw everything. About everything's connected. The way I treat myself, the way I treat you, the way I feed my body, where I get my food, how I interact with people when I'm checking out somewhere, what I'm thinking about while I'm doing the dishes. It just shifted my worldview profoundly as I went to continued to dive further and further into this part of myself. And I couldn't even imagine what my life would be without diving into that.
Right.
And I credit so many people who've influenced me on that path. And I've learned from so many people. I learn from everyone every day, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for Dr. Emmons for planting that seed, really. I credit a lot of that to him. Even though I wasn't ready for it at that time in my life, that's when the seed was planted, and I think it's just continuing to blossom. And I hope to eventually maybe gain my yoga teacher certification, maybe teach classes or learn more about energetic healing, because I'm really into that during this phase of my life. Mm-hmm. And I think science... how I was talking about how I love the marriage of the discipline creativity. I also love the realm that I feel that's coming alive right now. That's the intersection, I guess you would say, of the woo-woo or the spiritual and the science. So they're starting to do a lot of studies to prove that meditation does have a profound impact over your body. You are able to heal yourself from some of these diseases through the power of the mind and the influence that you have over your life, and the power and the autonomy that you have to create the life that you want to live. So that kind of intersection of the science and the spiritual is really fascinating to me. Joe Dispenza has a lot of work coming out around that kind of stuff right now. And that's probably where my focus is most at the moment, in the realm of the spiritual.
Incredible.
I also had a few, I don't know if I can talk about this, psychedelic trip experiences.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. That
free reign, dude.
That really shot forward that spiritual journey. And warning, I'm no expert on.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, don't do the drug if you don't want to do the drug.
Yeah. Yeah.
if you feel so inclined to do so, as someone who, I've only done shrooms, and I would say both experiences were what in the hell? Yep. There is just so much going on around me. And it's no secret. If you watch any of the videos I've ever made, perspective is a key word that exists in my life, because there's just so much more than my own. And the only way to grow my own is to embrace the others. And I think you kind of hit the nail on that with, talking about how you had to be mindful for yourself through yoga, and it kind of increased your mindfulness for others, because it's just inherently something that happens when you get that closer to inner peace. You literally have peace with everyone around you in result. And I think that that's incredible. It's something that I would love to get into and learn more from you, because, I know there's probably someone that claims they're an expert about it, but no one's really an expert. They just kind of, know what they know, and you go from there. And I want to know what you know, because, for now you sound like an expert, and that's kind of what we're all. We're our own expert, and you know yourself way better, because when you go into that, that silent mode that you were speaking on, which I guess I want to know, what was that? What is that like for you? When you go full radio silence, where does your mind go?
It's really hard to put into words.
It's a loaded question.
I struggle with words in general, but especially around this sort of stuff, I feel like words never quite touch it, because it's an experience. But I think that the mind is always there, and when I go into that place, it always starts with me just watching the thoughts. The thoughts are there, of course, but I'm the watcher of the thoughts, and I try not to follow them down the rabbit hole, but just see them pass. And eventually, kind of like liken it to clouds in the sky. Of course, that's the metaphor that's commonly used. There normally starts out with a lot of clouds, and then there's less clouds, and then you see more sky. I think our natural way of being is to be the sky, is to be that kind of open, blank space. I think that's how we naturally are. And then the mind and the thoughts just cloud it a little bit. And for me, when I can get myself into that space, I think peace is a close word to it, but even not quite. It just feels like being, like I'm just alive. I am breath, and I don't feel so much division between the idea of myself, like lowercase s self, and everything else. I feel more like capital S self and like a collective whole, like one with the air and the earth and everyone.
Yeah.
And I feel like too, to tap back into the like psychedelic experiences, those are some of the first few times that I felt that deep connection. And that I went on a camping trip a few weekends ago and had a really magical experience and with mushrooms. And right as I was going into it, a friend there, his name was Tyler, I'm pretty sure that's who said it. It was like, kind of feels like shedding skin when you start to kind of come up on the trip. And for me, like going into a meditation is extremely similar to that feeling of you are remembering who you really are outside of the idea that the mind has created you to be, which I think that serves a purpose. I think the ego and the mind 100% serve a purpose so you can play out this experience. But I think you need to remember that you are more than that created identity, and that I am you and you are me, that essence that lives with us, that fire, whatever you want to call it, that God self, that deep self, it's the same in you as it is me, and it's the same in everything. It's the essence of everything. And I think any way you can get yourself to remember that and tap into that space is truly magical. But during that last camping trip experience that I had, I kind of went into it just, mushroom medicine, give me what I need. Whereas before that, my last experience was not so good because I went into it very structured. I need to do this during this trip experience. And it sent me down a bad road. I was stuck in my head, which was probably what I needed in that moment, maybe. But this last one, I was just completely open to the experience of whatever was going to be. And I felt like I was connected soulfully, and I was every woman who has ever been, every mother who has ever mothered. I just felt this deep connection to like the divine feminine, I guess you would say. And I was weeping, and I didn't feel like any deep sadness. I would feel kind of energetic blocks in my body, I guess you would say, and I'd feel them move through, but I just kept weeping these tears, and I didn't even feel like they were my own tears, Devin. I felt like they were tears from every woman that were just flowing through me. And I sat with that and I was like, what is my purpose? Like, why am I here? And that just kept coming through, like just the tears of every woman who's ever lived. And I thought, oh, I kept being like, what's my answer? What's my purpose? And that's what kept coming, is just the connection to the collective. And I was like, oh, maybe that's it. Just to recognize that I'm not this limited concept of self, but I am everything. And I can feel everything. And I'm just here to continue to expand that collective consciousness.
Wow.
And it felt like I could never feel alone.
Yeah.
When you remember
that you're actually not.
You're not alone at all.
Yeah, it sounds like you had a deeply profound experience of like just straight pure ego death. And I think that process is it's euphoric, but it's incredibly scary to open yourself up to that realm, because I know personally in my very first experience with mushrooms, I was with two high school friends. Shout out to Kobe and Jose. Y'all are some of my best friends. They're really good people. And we hadn't spoken since graduation, high school graduation. So it was about, 3 or 4 years separated. And Jose had been dealing with an issue with his father's deportation, ICE trying to deport him back to Mexico. Kobe had his things going on, and we all just like found ourselves, being incredibly giggly and just in the moment. But we kind of stripped everything down after a moment. It was like, man, we just started talking. And I think there was like a moment where Jose started talking about his father, and then I started talking about things that were going on in my life. And then Kobe was starting to talk about things going on in his life, and we were just like embracing each other's experience as human beings, knowing that we loved each other and that we were going to be there for each other, and it was an open space to share such information. And just like we're like openly teaching each other that like it's going to be okay. This experience is merely, an experience, but nonetheless you're not alone in experiencing what you're experiencing. And then the sadness of what we were sharing kind of just diminished into positivity, because it was like, so what?
Exactly.
It's gonna be okay. Like everything that happens negatively in our lives is, in that moment, oh my God, the world is gonna come down on me.
It's the worst thing.
It's scary. And that deeply profound moment of like, oh, it's gonna be okay. And seeing Jose, like his face change from tears to, oh, it's gonna be okay, was like a moment for me to be like, oh, it's okay. But I didn't know how to, transfer my emotions from, oh, it's going to be okay, because I'm always like, oh, it's going to be okay. I didn't know how to do the tear thing, which I feel like that's something that I learned after that trip, and I would have never really gotten there without that trip. So psychedelics do stuff that I would definitely say helped in my growth, and sometimes it could definitely be a bad trip and send you somewhere you don't want to be.
100%.
But I don't know, man. There's always something profound there, even in the negative ones.
I think so too. Yeah. And I think that not just with our trips, but our general life experience of everything.
Yeah.
Like, I think the trips are just a magnification of life, really.
100%.
And you can see beyond kind of the, matrix of this life.
Yeah.
Or the kind of the everyday monotony of life.
Sure.
But I think it's like a medicine. Like, it can give you what you need. I think you should proceed with caution 100%.
Yeah.
But I think too, like your note on that kind of unifying experience that you had with your friends, I think that was a big part of my trip experiences too. I remember my very first experience and how I felt so close to the group of people that I was with, and it was so beautiful. I can remember it so vividly to this day. Yeah. And then when I had my bad experience, I did it alone, and I really thought I have to just fix everything. I wanted to do all this healing on myself, and then it didn't go well. And then the most recent time I was with a group and I felt very safe, and I think that was an important thing for me to take away from that, because I can be a person to try to really do all the things on my own, as opposed to really leaning on people to support you.
Sure.
I don't do enough of that. I think a lot of us fall victim to that, of wanting to do all the things for ourselves, fix ourselves,
like
not lean on people for support.
We think we're so resilient.
We do.
We're not.
We do. But people can help us, and people want to help you.
Yeah.
And if you can just be vulnerable enough, vulnerability is a strength, I really believe, to allow those people in, that's how you grow and you tap into strength maybe you think you don't have. And I think we should really connect with each other more like that. I don't think we talk enough about our struggles or even our victories, really, or we only talk about the victories, or we should connect with each other on deeper levels and talk about real things more often. I think a lot of people struggle because when everything's bearing down on you, as life does to you, it can feel like such a you thing. Yes. Like, this is my problem. These are my neuroses. These are my weird things that I have to deal with. These are my struggles. But everyone out here is struggling. in different ways, different degrees, going through different things. But those aren't you problems. Those are, to be a person, a human being on this absurd planet, problems. So if you can talk about that with other people, you just already feel less alone, and it just already feels a bit less frightening. You still have to go through the darkness, your own darkness, but you just feel less alone. You know that someone else has walked that path before you. Someone else is walking that path with you right now. And for me, that is probably the biggest part of my life in the past few years, is trying to connect more deeply with people that I'm close to and people that I'm meeting. Like even at work, for example, I work in a really it's an engineering lab job environment. People aren't talking to each other and connecting about their lives, but I've tried to really bring that into that space. And I think that's one of the most important parts of my life path, is no matter where I am, to bring that as much as I can into a space, that feeling of connection, of unity, of learning about each other, of positivity, because it's just better.
Yeah.
It's better that way.
It's literally the unification of our experience, and realizing how unified it actually is will make the experience itself actually really, really satisfying and actually peaceful, or as close to it as we can possibly get.
Yeah, it's so painful and so beautiful. It's brutal. It's like brutal and beautiful. And it's like such a paradox. But to walk through that paradox with other people, I think, is really important. And how your big thing is like perspective, I think my big thing is paradox, like technique, creativity, the marriage of that. And everything can be so painful and so beautiful at the exact same time.
Yes.
And I think life is a paradox. And I think that's one of the important things on my spiritual journey in the past few years of my life, is being able to hold that paradox of life in all its beauty and all its pain, and just sit with that. I think it's Carl Jung that says paradox is the closest thing to comprehending the fullness of life. And I think that's absolutely 100% true. I think I'm only able to bring light and positivity and joy and love to spaces and people because I have sat with the pain and the darkness too. I think they're equal and opposite, of you're only able to experience as much beauty as you're able to hold of the pain.
Sure.
And I think they really go hand in hand. So for me, it's just being vulnerable enough to expose yourself to the fullness of everything that comes your way.
Wow. I'm in awe of you. Your brain is incredible. I love you.
Your brain too.
To wrap up the interview portion of this, I'm going to be asking a couple of things about what you love and like things that are important to you, because you're a reader, you're an avid reader. What would you say was the book that influenced you the most in your everyday life, whether, nonfiction, fiction, and the themes and, lessons learned within it kind of taught you a lot about yourself? What would you say that book was for you?
Impossible question.
I know.
But I'll highlight a few.
They're going to be loaded. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I was only a nonfiction book reader for quite a long time.
Okay.
Only nonfiction, like spiritual books, self-help books, learn about different topics, all the things. For a long time, that was my path. But some of those like realm of books that influenced me the most, I would say The Heart of the Buddhist Teachings.
Okay.
That was gifted to me. Hunter gifted me that book.
Fire.
And thank you, Hunter.
We love you, Hunter.
We do. That book taught me that it's not just meditation as you sit for 30 minutes. It's like how to immerse that into every single part of your life, every breath that you take. Yeah. That book influenced me tremendously.
Okay.
Another nonfiction book that had a pretty big impact on me, it's called This Here Flesh by Cole Arthur Riley.
Okay.
Also a spiritual book, but the way she frames God and kind of seeing beyond what can sometimes be like the dogma of religion, seeing beyond that, and just embracing the goodness of of what religions have to offer. Loved that book. But then my fiction fantasy journey began later. Best series of all time is Of Faithful and the Fallen by John Gwynne. It's a 4-book series. It's incredible. The character development in this book, Devin, when I tell you I was like crying over animal deaths, because the animals, not even just the people are incredible in the series, the way they're developed, but even the animals, their character is developed to such a degree that you are crying when the animals pass away. It's such a dynamic book series. The action and like the fighting scenes are super duper intense.
Wow.
The general plot of like the God War going on is so captivating, but you stay for the characters and the progression of the characters. So Of the Faithful and the Fallen, John Gwynne, it's just a must read. Even if you don't read, you should read it.
I'm trying. This is why I asked, because I'm reading Rick Rubin's The Creative Act.
I want to read that. That's on my to-read list.
I'll lend you the book.
Please
It's
do.
been an incredible read. I think I've read 2 chapters before I do a video every single time, because it's like a roadmap. You can kind of pick which chapter you need for what kind of advice, or just kind of just like a push into being a creative being for the moment. And you can just it's a roadmap. And I've really found myself like being like, if I'm in a rut and I don't know what to do with this idea that I have, which it always starts with an idea, I'll be like, okay, I do want to do that, but what the fuck am I gonna say? And I find myself like, all right, just read the book, you'll find something. And every single time without fail, it's been so supplying to my process. And I'm just like, damn, I've been missing out on books, man. Like,
Books are awesome.
I try, but I'm not a reader. I'm so visual with what I take in, but I'm getting better about it and just adding it to my life. But that kind of moves me into my next question, and it's going to be the last one of this incredible podcast. Thank you, by the way, for coming on.
Thank
You're
you.
incredible.
I love you. You're incredible.
I love you too. What's your favorite album of all time?
No. Right before we started this, I asked you your favorite band. And you
I
couldn't
know.
even do that.
Now, did I say Nirvana or did I not say Nirvana?
He said Nirvana.
So give me your favorite fucking album.
Ah.
In a very similar vein to what I asked about your favorite book, how did an album that supplied you the most, gave you the most catharsis, kind of sent you into a spin of your thoughts, took you there, and you can go back to it and realize it was such a great lesson for you?
Devin, this is so hard for me.
Yeah, I know. It's hard for me too, dude.
Okay. I'm going to go with The Smiths, The Queen is Dead.
Interesting.
I love that album so much, and I started my love of the Smiths right as I really began my journey into different music than I'd never ever really been into before. I kind of stayed in this little box of music, and then when I started getting into the Smiths, that was the time when I started to get into all other types of music.
Sure.
And I was obsessed with their sound, like how we talk about the juxtaposition of things, of how the music and the sound sounded so groovy and upbeat and fun, but what Morrissey is saying was never upbeat and fun at all.
In the slightest
so
bit.
sad, so somber, very heavy. The juxtaposition of those in the music, I just fell in love. I love the sound of it. I love the groove of it. To this day, it never gets old. That's what I'm going to say, even though that's an impossible question.
It's a very impossible question, but you gave a great answer, because I'll give the Smiths credit for probably being one of the best versions of that juxtaposition you speak of it sounds happy as all hell, but the subject matter is insanely sad, and it's kind of like, is he okay?
Exactly.
And, I mean, I won't say fuck Morrissey, but fuck Morrissey.
Oh, fuck Morrissey. Yeah, we're saying that. That needed
It's
to be
okay.
acknowledged. I'm glad
No,
you
it's
said
fine.
that.
It's still a great album.
Yeah, for sure.
Ivy, you're an incredible person, and I'm so glad that I have one of our profound conversations on record forever now, because, you've been such a great friend of mine, And I don't think I would have ever met you if I didn't, start working at the godforsaken movie tavern.
The movie tavern.
Met one of my best friends, Hunter. Shout out to you if you're watching right now. And that one day I met you, I was just like, dude, she's cool. Like,
I knew it.
I don't really,
We
I don't know
connected.
her yet, but like even when we went out to dinner, and that dinner was like kind of awkward in hindsight because it was like all our first time
Yep.
hanging out outside of the work walls, and I just like always ended up looking over at you, and you're just kind of like embracing everybody's like presence, and I'm like, she's fucking cool. I don't know shit about her, but she's cool as shit. And throughout, probably one of my toughest years, 2022, I found myself in y'all's apartment like every week, it seemed, just kind of like leaving reality for a little bit. And I found that solace and that peace with you and Hunter all the time. And I'm very, very thankful for you just kind of always being there in a tough time, and down to the moment when my mom passed and you being at her funeral. That was a moment of like, oh, these are my people. And I knew it already, of course, but it's just like moments like that where I'm just like, I can't take for granted what I have here.
You sure
and
can't.
experience these people that I love deeply. And
I'm so grateful for you too. You're one of those people that every single time I'm around you, I feel better and more fulfilled for being around you. Genuinely, I mean that with my whole entire heart. Just the trueness and your authenticity, it just comes through. It's so infectious. It makes me feel safe and like I can be the full version of myself. And to see you doing this creative work, not just thinking it, but making it happen, it's awesome. It's so awesome.
And I can say much of the same for you. Ivy, thank you for coming on the podcast. I love
Thank you, Devin. I love you.